Hey everyone, welcome back to the Bright Podcast. I hope that everyone is having a fantastic day. I'm so grateful that you are choosing to take time out of your day to come listen to me talk. And so this season so far, we've talked a lot about checking our heart and making sure that our heart is all in at all times in everything that we do. And so whether we're doing about our normal day or taking the Lord's Supper or just having a heart like Jesus, we have to be all in at all times because that's what Jesus was when he lived on this earth. He was all in at all times. So today we're going to be talking about where our heart is in worship. So this is going to be a super beneficial few minutes, and we're talking about a few things that might help you and myself when it comes to how we worship. And first and foremost, we are to worship in spirit and in truth. In John 4, Jesus talked to a woman at the well. He told her things about her life that only she knew, and she began to believe in everything that Jesus said. And then the woman, she was complaining that she couldn't truly worship because she was a Samaritan, and the Jews didn't want anything to do with the Samaritans. But in the few verses that we're about to read, we see what true worship is and how Jesus wants us to worship this way. And how worship is no longer only in the temple, but is wherever you want it to be. And in John 4, starting in verse 19 and reading through verse 26, it says, "Then the woman said to him, 'Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem is the place where one ought to worship.' Jesus said to her, 'Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father is seeking such to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth.' The woman said to him, 'I know that the Messiah is coming, who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all these things.' Then Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he." And that's just John 4. It's just such a powerful passage that talks about true worship and many other things that we won't get into today. But since Jesus came to earth, he took away the old way of worship and is opening up a new way for all of us to be able to worship wherever we live, in order that more people than ever can worship God and not just the Jews. This is important because when we worship, we must worship in spirit and in truth. We worship God with a genuine heart that aligns with the truth of God's word. When we worship God, we must be all in at all times. In every part of worship, we must be all in at all times. And so now this episode, I'm going to give a few general overviews of the different parts of worship, where our hearts are, because in the next couple episodes, we're going to do more of a deep dive into the different parts of worship, the different aspects of worship, and where our heart is in those different parts. But for the rest of this time, I just want to give a few tips and tricks that I use to prepare myself for worship, and hopefully to help someone listening to be better prepared for when it does come time to worship. And so, first of all, I was to be completely honest with you. I do not do all these things every time I worship. I try to do all of these things to prepare myself, to prepare my mind, to prepare my heart for worship. But, sometimes I just don't. Sometimes I forget. Sometimes I just don't want to do these things. And, that's just how life works sometimes. But what I need to do better of, and what we all can do better of, is planning out ways where we can be better focused when we are worshiping God. And so the few tips I have are here. Hopefully that, I can do a better job of these, and hopefully, we all can do a better job of these, because when worshiping God, that is the most important thing that we're going to do during the week. So first of all, preparing for worship starts on Saturday night. You think, why Saturday night? But preparing for worship starts on Saturday night because of the sleep that you're going to get that night. Instead of staying up late watching movies or scrolling on your phone, or whatever you're doing on a Saturday night, and try to go to bed at a decent time, so that you can get good night's rest and be ready and awake in the morning. I'm not saying you got to go to bed like right after you eat dinner on Saturday night, but don't stay up till 1-2 o'clock in the morning. go to bed at a decent time so that you can get a good amount of sleep, so that when you wake up, you're up and ready to go and ready to worship. And also, if you get a good night's sleep, you're going to get up. You're more likely to get up early on time, and so that you can take your time. Get doing whatever you do to get ready, and then get driving or however you get to church. Taking your time and doing that. Whereas if you stay up late, you might press snooze on your alarm a couple times. You might sleep in and wake up. You only have a couple minutes to get ready before you have to leave. And then by the time you get to church, you're still so tired that you end up falling asleep during the sermon. And none of us want to do that every Sunday. And so the first step is getting a good night's sleep, so that we are ready, we're awake, and we don't have to rush around, and we're awake during the most important time of the week. So secondly, when you get to the church, when you get to your seat, and worship's getting ready to start, what I try to do, what I haven't done recently, but I used to do, is I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and I put it down on the floor face down. You do that, you're not going to be tempted to pick it up and get on it and be on it during the service, during the worship service. But if it's right next to you and it's face up, you might get an ESPN notification or text message or something, whatever, and you might be tempted to go pick that up and then next thing you know, you've been on your phone for a couple minutes and you missed half the sermon or something. None of us want that. So it's easier. You just take your phone, put it face down, Do Not Disturb, on the ground, and then so it's there, and you can see that it's there, but you're also not on it, and you're gonna be less likely to be tempted to be on it if it's right there, right in front of you, open, and it just keeps lighting up because you get notifications and everything. So you put it face down where you can't see all those notifications, you can't feel the buzzing of somebody texting you or something. It's there. And then that takes away some distractions. And because when we're worshiping, we're supposed to give our full attention and full devotion to God and not whatever is happening on our phone. You can always, it's still going to be there when the worship service is over, so you can always, go and pick it up and respond to whatever messages or see whatever happened in the sports world or whatever notification you might get. It's still going to be there when worship is done. But the most important thing in that moment is to be worshiping God and not to be on our phones. And next, what I like to do is during the sermons, I like to take notes. So I started taking notes during the sermons about 2 years ago, and I love doing it. I love taking notes because it helps to keep me focused during the sermon, because I try to write down as much as I can, and I also do that because it also helps me better remember what the sermon was about. Instead of, just sitting there listening and following on the scriptures, I'm actually, writing notes down and can actually go back and look and remember what the sermon was about, so that those most of the time, whoever does the closing prayer is like, please let brother so and so's sermon and help apply that to our lives and our daily walk or whatever. You know what I'm talking about, like all those prayers, different prayer at the end of the service. What they say. But to actually apply those sermons, whatever you're learning in the sermon, to your life, you have to be able to remember it. If you can't remember it, then I recommend getting a notebook and a pen or something and taking notes during the sermon, so that as you're writing it down, you're listening and you're writing it down, and then you can go back and read it so that you can better remember what you're learning during the sermon, so you can better apply that sermon to your life. Also, when I take notes to give me ideas for future lessons that I may give. If I hear something that sparks an idea, I put a star on the line next to it, so that I remember to go back and look and write whatever idea down later. And so most importantly, when you're worshiping, you should be mentally checked in. You can't be, off thinking about, the game the night before, thinking about going to the Titans game after worship, or where you're going out to eat after. You have to be fully focused and fully locked in when you are worshiping. You have to be all in at all times when you are worshiping God. Worship is the most important thing that we will do during the week. And if we're not all in at all times, then when we are worshiping, then we're just wasting our time. We worship God not because it is what we have done, not just because it's what we've done every Sunday of our lives, but we worship God because of the great and wonderful things that He has done for us. He sent His Son into this world to save it. He sent Jesus to light up this dark world. And we should worship him because it was through his sacrifice that we have a chance at eternal life. We must worship God with our full hearts and with full devotion. We must be all in at all times during every part of worship. Whether it's when you're praying, whether it's when you're singing, whether it's when you're taking the Lord's Supper or reading from the Bible or listening to the sermon, you must be all in at all times because Jesus gave his all for you. And so to close out this episode, I want to read from one of my favorite songs that will hopefully wrap up this episode nicely. The song is called Here I Am to Worship. You've probably sang it or heard of it before. But it talks about how worship is so important for us. It says, "Light of the world, you step down into darkness. Open my eyes and let me see. Beauty that made this heart adore you. Hope of a life spent with you. Here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you are my God. Altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. King of all days, oh so highly exalted, you're glorious in heaven above. Humbly you came to this earth you created, all for love's sake became poor. Here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you are my God. Altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. I'll never know how much it cost to see my sin upon that cross. I'll never know how much it cost to see my sin upon that cross." We will never know how much it costs to see our sin upon that cross. But what I do know is that every single day of our lives, we have opportunities to worship God. We have opportunity to tell someone who is in the dark about the light. And especially on Sundays, we all have the opportunity to worship. So I hope and pray that this coming Sunday, and every Sunday from here on out, that all of us worship all in at all times. Before you go to sleep on this Saturday night, remember to check your heart and make sure that you're preparing yourself for the wonderful worship you're about to partake the next day.